Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining today. I am here with my good friend Lauren Guest. She is the founder of Etta Financial, and she helps married couples. She coaches them in their faith and in their finances. And today we're going to be talking about how to build a financially strong marriage and kind of some tips and tricks that she has learned from personal experiences as well as from the Bible. And so with that, hey, Lauren.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I always love chatting with you and hearing all of your wisdom about finances and marriage.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to start out today by just, you know, letting people know who you are, what you do, and a little bit more about Etta Financial itself.
I'm Lauren Guess. I'm the face behind Etta Financial. I have two little boys with my husband, Hayden, and we live in Texas, born and raised the Texas Panhandle. Um, I consider myself a financial unity coach. So I don't just deal with finances, but also with the how to make them work within a marriage. This was kind of birthed out of I've always had a problem solving personality. Any problems with either a situation or a relationship, I was always in there kind of as a third party wanting to make all the pieces fit together. So I've been doing that for a long time, not just with money, but just life in general and family and everything. So I have never had an issue with money. I have my mom and dad said that I was a hoarder of cash. I mean, that's never been an issue with me, and so I didn't realize that other people had issues with saving money. So till I got married, and my husband and we were raised very similar, but not when it came to finances. My husband, when we got married, I had no debt. I was very intentional with my finance, or I consider it intentional. I was very good at saving money. That's not always the very best thing to be
Mm.
doing. There's other good things to be doing with money too, but I kind of had a scarcity mindset in there, and that's not always healthy either, but I didn't realize that. My husband, on the other hand, had no problem with debt. He had no problem spending money before he made it. And that was really the first big hiccup in our marriage, because everything else we just really saw eye to eye on. And so it happened, oh, it was about 2 years into our marriage, and he bought two brand new pickups.
Oh.
Yeah, everybody has that response. And they weren't just like half-ton pickups. I mean, they were one-ton dually pickups. I mean, you're looking at over $120,000 in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so and they depreciate so bad. It's not even like it was an investment. It was definitely a headache. And he works on the road. So he's always been a pipeline welder. Ever since I've known him, that's what he's done, and required him to be on the road a lot, which became a problem when we have a homestead and taking care of everything here. That required me and my one son at the time, now two, to be at home. And so basically, up until this pandemic, we have been a we've never had to live together. I mean, we've dealt with finance. I mean, we've dealt obviously with things together as a couple, but um, we never lived together, and that was hard. We wanted to. I mean, that we want to live
Mm.
together. We want to be a family unit, and so that was a real big driving force in becoming financially intentional, because we couldn't stand being apart all the time. I mean, we were 2, 3, 4, 5 hours apart, and you go weeks without seeing each other. So that's kind of where our story began.
Yeah, I can see how that'd be pretty tough, especially with different financial decisions if you're not, sitting down and talking with them, talking about them. I think there's definitely something to like sitting down and seeing each other face to face and, feeling those emotions that come along with financial decisions. So, yeah,
Exactly.
that would be very tough.
Yeah. So that was something that we definitely have had to work through. And now, now our challenge is actually living together,
Yeah.
having to live in the same home together. We haven't had to do that. So it's brought some different challenges, but I love these challenges a lot more.
Yeah. So, is that kind of what led you into starting Edda Financial then, is just kind of having those like small financial problems that you saw within your own marriage and seeing those things reflected in other, marriages?
Yes. So that was a part of it. I've always really enjoyed business. I mean, my degree is in agricultural business and economics. I love knowing how money works and how to use it best and how everything kind of plays together. And so I've always really enjoyed that. So I took the Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach course. I can't think
Like the actual coaching course, not just the
yeah.
Financial Peace University?
No, so we did Financial Peace. That was a wedding gift from my dad for us. And so
Cool.
we did. Well, cool for me. My husband was not excited about it. Like I said, like he is just now on board. After we finally paid off our debt, he was like, "Oh, this is really cool. Like I do have freedom." He wasn't on board with the freedom until the freedom was actually there. And so I would love to get him, I don't know if I ever can, but I would love to get him on video and kind of hear his side of the story, because he was very hesitant on all of it. He's like, "You're taking all my fun away." And so I had to learn some things along the path of that. And I think that's kind of what makes my position a little bit unique, is I know there's other people that are like that. I basically did Financial Peace by myself. I did the financial coaching master training by myself. I mean, like it's something that I really like. But when I was doing that, the coaching, the training, I started doing some coaching, but I started noticing something, because I won't coach one spouse without the other. And so I started running into some roadblocks there. And it's kind of just a liability deal for me. Like, I don't want the wife to be coming to me for coaching and then go tell her husband, "Well, Lauren said," and throwing my name. Throwing my name around like a cuss word, basically. I didn't want that to happen. So that's why I really just focused on, okay, I have to have y'all together. Why? There was so much pushback, and I realized that I could be compassionate with those people because I was there. Like, had we not done Financial Peace University at home, because we did the at-home version, we didn't do it in at the church or in a meeting, Hayden wouldn't have gone. He would not have gone. And now I've been an instructor for Financial Peace University, and he has gone with me, and he's given some of his insight. And so he's much more interested in it now and wants to be kind of a light for other people that are in that situation. So that pushback that I saw when I was trying to do coaching, that's where I saw my niche. I saw, that is a need that needs to be filled, is meet those people where they are. And I'm still trying to implement that. I mean, there's several different tools that I'm kind of trying out to see what is most useful in getting those couples to be financially intentional together. So that's really where it started. And my parents got divorced when I was in high school. They have since been divorced more.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then when I started all this, when I started Financial Coach Master Training, my in-laws were in the middle of getting divorced. And not all of them were directly related to finances, but there were threads of that in there. And I've noticed in my own marriage that when I could start talking to Hayden about finances, we could talk about other things, because talking about finances is hard. And so when you can start there and learn how to talk about finances, it opens up the communication. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think that's so true, because finances is definitely one of the hardest things to talk about in marriage. My husband and I were blessed just to kind of be on the same page that you were personally, of like both of us kind of had like a decent financial background, nothing we didn't really know about investing and anything further than just like saving our money, but both of us were very good at saving. And the fact that we kind of had like a decent foundation for finances kind of helped us to springboard into having deeper conversations about it. And I think you're so right in the fact that if you can talk about finances, especially when like things are really tough, like when you have to make the tough financial decisions, it really kind of opens up this door to like just so many other conversations and just being really open and vulnerable with each other. And I think there's really something to that. But I'm kind of curious, with the couples that you kind of talk to, or even like not just necessarily coach, but just in general, what's one of the biggest struggles that you tend to see financially between the two? Like, is it debt? Is it just not communicating, or, what?
Hey, debt obviously has its stress, depending on, the level of it compared to your income. That can cause a lot of stress. But really, I think the biggest issue that I see in couples is the fact that they're not communicating. They don't have a joint plan. They don't have a joint vision. They don't have joint financial goals. And so, if you don't, then any sort of extreme increase in debt or decrease in income. So say somebody loses a job, or the wife decides she wants to stay home with the kids, anything that can drastically reduce your income or drastically increase your outgo. I mean, a large medical bill that you didn't have the insurance or not the proper insurance to cover, those things are what causes the biggest stress. But when you don't have communication, and a lot of that stems from either, I think the difficulty for them to get there is the fact that the ones that I've seen anyways, their pride is in the way. They can't be vulnerable. I mean, that was my husband. My husband was very prideful, and he didn't want to admit that he couldn't go do these things. He didn't want to tell his friends no. He didn't want to have the beater pickup. He didn't want to have those things. And that was that pride. That was really rooted in pride. In the fact that he wasn't raised to be vulnerable. He was raised to keep it to yourself, deal with it yourself, go work an extra hour. If that means you have to leave home to work, do it. And so that's how he was raised. Then you have the other side, that's the people pleasers, which was like I was. I don't want the confrontation. So I didn't want to communicate it because my husband, who was rooted in pride, was going to be mad. And so I see this friction, and that friction is what people are trying to avoid. So they don't communicate. So they don't have a plan. And so, debt, really going into debt, that was scary. And I lost lots of sleep over it. I was very frustrated. I felt undermined. It was the emotional side of it. It was the fact that meant my husband was going to have to stay away longer. That meant that our goals, they were my goals. I didn't communicate with him. So that's the debt really isn't the problem. It's just, how do I say it? The having no plan, like, and not being on the same page. Like, debt hurts me. Debt didn't hurt Hayden. He didn't feel that. He hurt because he couldn't be home, but he didn't put two and two together that this is what's keeping you from home. Here's a plan that we can make to make you not feel that pain. So that kind of makes sense. That kind of answer your question a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of going off that, what would you say are kind of the key characteristics of like a financially strong marriage? So what makes up a financially strong marriage in your opinion?
I really believe being on the same page, or at least on the same book. I mean, in marriages, a lot of times it's not a matter of being on the same page. It's that you're in two different books.
Two different genres even.
Genres. Like, you are on this one's on fiction, this one's nonfiction. Like, we are not even on the same book, better yet, the same page. So getting on the same book, getting into the same chapter. I mean, just trying to open up those doors of communication, because you're not going to get anywhere not communicating about it. You can't. You're not going to be on the same page. You don't have the same goals. Now you may have similar goals and take similar steps to get there, but he's going this way and you're going this way, and you're both thinking that the other person's in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so really getting on the same page and communicating about it, that's what makes a financially strong marriage.
And how do you think that our faith plays into our finances? Like, what kind of an impact should our faith have on those decisions?
Well, just like everything else in life, your financial decisions need to align with scripture. So always going back and rooting yourself in scripture. So remembering that, I mean, it says it in Genesis all the way through like the Corinthians. It is not ours. Like nothing here is ours. That includes our finances. And, you know, a lot of people get frustrated. Hayden got really frustrated when I said that. I'm like, it's not yours. And he's like, BS, I worked my butt off for that. I said, who gave you those skills? Who gave you the opportunities? God did. You owe it to him. This is all his. Now if you're going to be a good steward of it, he will bless you with more, and, you know, realizing that, but accepting those instructions and reaping the rewards from that. All this is rooted in scripture. Tithing. I mean, before I was a tither, it's kind of an off note, kind of a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I viewed tithing just kind of like whatever was left over. I wasn't really raised to tithe. Like I saw my parents put a check in the plate, but I don't even think they knew what they were doing. Like, they never talked about it. It wasn't something that was discussed in our family at all. And Hayden's either. So, I really saw it when I started having financial goals. I saw it as something that was a roadblock. Like I really did, honestly. I'm my naive, spiritual immaturity, whatever you want to call it, thought that tithing was a roadblock. It didn't make sense. It was counterproductive to me. So, I had heard a tithing message, I'm sure, several times, but I had never actually received it. So the day that I received a tithing message, this is kind of a rabbit trail. You can edit it out if you want, but it's just kind of a funny story. So I was in a little church, this little white church, and Hayden was gone working. I was with my 2-year-old son, and I was pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant. We were in July. It was July in Texas. Hot.
Oh.
Hot. This little white church had no air conditioner. Like, it was hot, and there was no nursery. It was a little church. And so my 2-year-old was there. I'm pregnant. I'm hot. And I received a tithing message. Like, that's just a miracle. Like, none of this should have added up. But I was so on fire, and I was like, we're going to do this. Our heart's going to be in the right place. And I went home. I was so excited. And I went home and started putting pencil to paper, and all the excitement just drained out of me. Like, there's no way. There's no way to make this work. We are in so much debt. We have made such bad decisions. Like, God can't even fix this. Like, that's how I felt. That's how upset I felt. And I talked to Hayden, and he was not happy with me because he was like, well, how much is it going to cost me? And I was like, well, it's a tenth. A tithe is a tenth, explaining to him. And like I said, we were in baby steps. And he was like, not happy about it. He wasn't happy at all. And, but we did it anyways, and God didn't let the check bounce. So we did it again. We kept challenging. I mean, because what is it in Malachi? I think it's in Malachi 3:10. Anyways, it says, test me, like tithe and see if I will not open the floodgates of heaven for you. And I was like, I'm standing on this promise. I'm standing on this promise. And it did. And God met that promise, and we have been tithing ever since. I mean, everything that comes in, any dime, any birthday money, anything. I mean, I'm like, give your tithe. And the heart transformation that happened was really the best thing that happened. I mean, our hearts are so much softer towards God, towards our family, towards people in need. But also our financial, we were able to get out of debt. There should have been pencil to paper says you are not getting out of debt. And so tithing really is, I know that's kind of a rabbit trail, but tithing is the biggest. Tithing and prayer are the biggest things to making financial decisions, in my opinion. But then scripture says there's no satisfaction in the love of money or your income. I mean, if you want to be satisfied, if you really want to be content, you can't love your money. You can't serve money and God. You have to choose God. So, all those in scripture, there's several different things. One that I want to talk about specifically is Matthew 19:24. And it's the one that, so a lot of financial people don't talk about this because it says it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich person to get into the kingdom of heaven. And a lot of financial people, they won't talk about it because they're like, uh-oh, this means we can't be rich. But have you ever heard it explained?
Honestly, we just recently talked about it in a sermon, but I can't really remember exactly how it was explained. I actually learned something new about it, that a lot of times they talk about like the camel going through this door in a city or something, but I'd love to hear how you have explained it.
So that's how that book that I told you about, The Monk and the Merchant, it actually talks about it in there. So basically the eye of a needle, we all think of like a sewing needle, and they're like a camel through this little bitty, like there's no way. But the eye of the needle, like you said, it's a walkway into the walls of a city. And for a camel, so usually, camels, they rode on camels, but they also packed them. They were pack camels. So they had all this baggage on them. And so for the camel to get through the eye of the needle, they would have to take the baggage off, and they would have to crawl. Like the camel would really, literally, and it's very hard for a camel to do. They would have to get down and crawl through the eye of the needle because it was meant for humans, not camels. Wow. So basically what that's saying is, for a rich person to get into the kingdom of heaven, their heart has to be in the right place. To get there, you have to take off your baggage. You have to lay those things down. You have to realize those things aren't your identity. Those things aren't you. And you have to bow down in humility to God with your finances. And that means not being prideful, not being selfish, not, so these are all, to me, that was the biggest relief to me, because at first I was like, so if you have money, you can't have a good heart and still get to heaven. And so that always bothered me until I read that, and I was like, oh, finally, so I can have a good heart and I can have money and I can be okay. So that's one part of scripture that was really, it's refreshing. I think everything in scripture, all of it boils down to our hearts. If your heart is being prideful or selfish or anything like that, those are sins anyways. And so obviously it transfers to your finances too.
Yeah, I really like that symbolism of taking off your baggage and becoming humble before God in order to enter in. I think that goes for like so many areas in life, not even just our finances. So
for sure.
Yeah, I love coming back to that verse. So I'm really glad that you reminded me. But we did just talk about it in like a church sermon. I think it was maybe 2 weekends ago.
Yeah.
I can't really remember exactly what we talked about, but I definitely remember that coming up at this point.
Yeah, and like you said, it applies to so much more than just your finances. And that's where I tell people, it's all about your heart. Do a heart check. Where is your heart at? Is it being grateful and thankful and giving, or is it being prideful and discontent and selfish? And that's where, when you align your financial decisions with that, I feel like that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. So, you you kind of keep talking about this, like getting on the same page and being aligned. And I know that can be so difficult for a lot of couples. And I know that we talked about, some other practical steps that we can take with prayer and with tithing. But I mean, how would you say, like, if there's a couple, if there's a wife or a husband or someone listening to this right now who's like, that's me, like, that's us, we're not on the same page, what is something that couple should do first? Or that, even if it's just one person, because I know that in the beginning you were kind of talking about how a lot of times it's just the wife or the husband, there's one person who's like, we need to do this, and the other person's not there. What would you say to those people, or what do you say? Because I know that you've been talking to those people, but what should they do?
Okay, so I know, like you said, prayer and tithing, that is so important to implement. But if you want to take it a step further, So in my experience, because my husband was not on board at all, I really had to trust God. So it takes a heart transformation. And unfortunately, we are not in the business of that, but we are in a battle against the enemy, not your spouse. That's where you have to communicate. You have to communicate with your spouse and open that door. It doesn't have to be something difficult. I mean, you don't have to go hit them with, how are we going to pay off debt? I mean, it doesn't have to be that bold. You start talking to them and figuring out what their vision is and what their goals are and how money plays into those things. Just talking about, how are you liking your job? Because that's a big thing. A lot of people don't like their jobs. I mean, and my husband, he loved his job, but he didn't love the fact that he was gone all the time. And so I found that to be fuel. Another thing I found to be fuel was showing him how much he was spending in interest. I told him how much he was spending in interest, and he was like, seriously? He had no idea. I mean, the bank told him this much down, this much a month. And he was like, okay, cool, I can do that. They didn't talk about how much he was buying things twice with all the interest. I mean, it was ridiculous. So when I showed him that, he was like, I said, would you be throwing this money out the window? You just want to throw all this money out the window? And he was like, well, no, not really. I said, that's what you're doing. So just trying to figure out what motivates him or her, whoever your spouse is, what motivates them, what their dreams are, what their goals are, what their vision is for your family. And you can talk about those things without really talking about money. And that communication is, you're not just, makes me sound like you're building a case against them. You're not. You're just trying to really get to know them, And so like I said, we're in a battle against the enemy with this. We're not in a battle against your spouse. And that's where Ecclesiastes 4:12 is talking about how one person, you can't do it on your own. One person standing alone, you're going to be conquered. Two people can stand back to back and they can fight. A 3-cord strand with God, your spouse, and yourself, it's not easily broken. And that's really where you're trying to get to. Ultimately, that's where you're trying to get to. You're, obviously paying off debt would be nice. And a lot of people, that's their goal. But then a lot of people, they get to where they paid off debt and they're like, I'm still miserable. I still don't know. A lot of times it still doesn't fix the marriage. And I think that goes back to, okay, you were doing a behavior change. It wasn't a heart change. God's in the business of heart changes. We aren't. And so really trusting God and communicating. Past that, a spending plan of some sort, whether you want to call it a budget. Some people don't like budget, so you can use a different word, spending plan, whatever it is. That transparency, and usually one person is more financially intentional than the other. Ramsey Solutions calls it the free spirit and the nerd, and so usually there's a nerd and a free spirit. If you're the nerd and you're married to the free spirit, get a spending plan together. Hey, this is what I think that we'll spend for the month. What do you think? And just that transparency of knowing where the money's going, because that's what Hayden told me. And there was no transparency in his parents' marriage, especially when it came to finances. And so this was when he figured out that, because there was a situation where he came to realize that there was no transparency. And so then he came back to me and he's like, well, where's this money going? What's this money doing? I was like, bro, I have everything in the budget. If here it is, if you want to look at it, it's all transparent. You don't have to worry about where it's at. And that just builds trust. And showing what sacrifices you're making. Hey, I'm sacrificing X, Y, and Z so I can do X, Y, and Z. Just kind of talking about those, getting that vocabulary out there and talking to them about it makes it to where it's not such a icky conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So
go ahead.
Yeah, I think that just kind of starting those conversations is very important. And I know that you are offering a marital finances conversation starter kit. Can you tell everybody more about that?
Yeah, so these basically in that conversation starter kit, there's kind of there's a mind map, and it shows how everything really plays into your finances. And it's teaching you how to make your life revolve making your finances fit into your life instead of the other way around. You know, trying to hustle to make this, and this work. You're very reactive that way. So this helps you kind of see proactively how your money is used as a tool. And that just kind of brings a big picture. But then there's also, this is most people's favorite part, is the financial, there's 30 conversation starters that don't completely bore your spouse. So along with that, you'll get an email once a week. I'm still working on how long it is. Right now it's at 10 weeks. It's probably going to be more, but right now it's just at 10 weeks. And it expands on each of those. It expands on this resource and kind of keeps the conversation going. So like you'll get an email once a week and it's like, oh yeah, here's a simple little something to talk to my spouse about concerning finances. So if you haven't talked to your spouse about finances, or if every time you do, it's a fight, this is a really good place to start, because it's more of a easy entry instead of coming to them and being like, you're spending all the money, you know. Those aren't good financial conversations. So that's what it's meant for. And then you have my email right there, and you can always ask me any questions. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, then I will add a link to those conversation starter, the conversation starter kit and everything, so that if people are interested and need the help, that they can reach out and get it from you. Sure. But yeah, just wanted to see, was there anything else that you wanted to share with everyone? Anything about, the next steps in marital finances?
Well, I just want to let people know that there is hope. My situation seemed very hopeless. I resorted to depression for a long time. And when I realized that wasn't going to fix the problem, I pulled up my bootstraps and did something. And that's my heart here, is everything that I do is rooted in the fact that I want you to know, or not you necessarily, but the people that are listening, I want them to know that there's hope. And there are options, and I would love to work through them with you. So I also have a program that I'm working on to launch in May. I don't know when this recording is going to be out, but it'll be launching in May. And it's a guided platform to talk to your spouse about money, to get down to the nitty gritty of what are your goals, and how it all plays together. So I'm really excited about that too. So that's kind of
cool. Yeah. Well, then we'll stay connected, and hopefully someone who's listening to this says, yes, I need that, and they'll reach out. So awesome, Lauren. I really appreciate your wisdom today, and just sharing all this information. I know that this is going to reach someone out there who is needing the help, and I just pray that whoever that is, that they are ready to pull up their bootstraps.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed visiting with you, as always, Katie.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.